by throwing the ball into the turf.
Ground ball left side, diving stop, Lawrie, and he gets rid of the throw. Second for the Force to retire the Rays in the 8th inning. Outstanding play.
There's a drive. Lawrie on the run, takes one away from Morales. On his face, Brett Lawrie can make plays anywhere on the field. There he goes. Bounce toward third. Lawrie gets a big hop, barehands it, throws. What a play!
Here's the leap. If he comes down before he throws it, it's too late.
It is Sportsfeld Storytime. We are digging back into a really unique time as a Blue Jay fan. In between sort of eras, as I sort of would categorize what happens here. We're looking back 2011, the Brett Lawrie explosion. Brett Lawrie arriving on the scene, and we sort of said it before, is if you weren't there, you'll never understand that Brett Lawrie was pretty much immediately one of the most famous athletes in this entire city. The trajectory was like, this guy's going to be a multiple-time All-Star. He's going to lead the Blue Jays into their next generation of success. It'll be him, and it'll be Aaron Sebia, and it'll be Romero, and it'll be Jose Bautista. Will bring the Blue Jays back to relevance. Those were all reasonable thoughts, I have to tell you, in the summer of 2011.
So I've been thinking about it since we recorded episode 1 last week. And we said a lot, and you just said that unless you were a fan of the Blue Jays in 2011, it's you just can't explain the Brett Lawrie thing because it was so insane. The best way I can explain it is when Brett Lawrie was traded for literally Josh Donaldson. There were people who were like, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he wasn't even good by then. That was the power of 2011 Brett Lawrie.
He came on and he was, he hit 293, 373, 580 for a 953 OPS, a 153 OPS plus. He hit 9 home runs in 40 games, 4 triples, 8 doubles, drove in 25, stole 7 bases. And it should be added, was like a highlight reel third baseman as well. He the hard charging diving plays. He would make throws like vertical. He'd be horizontal in the air, laying out, barehanding balls. He was just like a supernova at third base. And we had just had the E5 era where like Encarnacion could hit but couldn't play third base. And they had Scott Roll in there. So it was like, how are they possibly going to fix this? And Brett Lawrie was like everything you could possibly want that to be and more.
Brett Lawrie's first game as a Blue Jay came on August 5th, 2011 against the Baltimore Orioles. He hit 9th and went 2 for 4 with an RBI.
Father Tom is watching in Vancouver, and Tom, your wish has come true. Your grandson is playing in the big leagues. Up the middle, base hit. Lawrie is going to get an RBI as the first run of the ball game will come in for the Blue Jays, and Encarnacion scores. And how about that?
And that was all we need to see. He drove in a run on us. He singled in the second inning to drive in Encarnacion. And the thing about Lawrie is because of the Canadianness, because of the way he played, and because the Blue Jays were a game above 500 in August when he showed up, it was just like, this is appointment viewing now.
Yes.
It was just so exciting from game 1.
Yeah, it was appointment viewing. That's a great point. And to cap off that series, he homers in the finale against Baltimore. They win that game 7-2, and he's still batting 9th, but goes 2 for 4 with his first home run.
It's 12 hits in his first 10 games as a Blue Jay. Like,
it's crazy.
It wasn't just that we thought he was going to be like, I feel like how you laid out the game was too small for the expectations.
I know.
In August of 2011, which seems crazy today because, like, he played fucking 40 games.
Let me ask you this: Where were you August 2021 or 2011? Because that's funny. I have a really, really crystallized memory of this time, and Brett Lawrie plays into it. Like, there's a Brett Lawrie moment that I will remember for a very long time, and it really crystallizes sort of me in 2011 at that point. So where were you in 2011?
I was in my parents' house for the most part in 2011. I moved back to Toronto from Montreal after getting dumped in July of 2011.
Okay.
So like, as we do when we're down, we latch on to our sports and especially our baseballs. And the Blue Jays weren't particularly exciting in 2011. But I remember the Brett Lawrie Mania because it was like in July, or I guess it would have been in August. I didn't remember when. Somewhere around the start of Brett Lawrie, they acquired Colby Rasmus.
Right.
And then Brett Lawrie showed up and Jose Bautista was hitting. And it was the Blue Jays in 2011 were a very important team for me because it was one of those things I could sort of throw myself into after being heartbroken and moving back home and all those things. But it was also sort of one of my ways of being like, I'm back in Toronto. Like, I can root for the Jays again, and the games are on television every day in bars. Yeah. And I can go to the games every day if I wanted to, because we were averaging 13,000 fans a game. And it was just like, but the 2011 Blue Jays were a big part of me reacclimating to Toronto.
Huge.
And like restarting my life in a lot of ways.
That's awesome. Yeah. And Brett Lawrie, what better way to be reborn than in the spirit of Brett Lawrie? I mean,
right. But that was it. It was like, he had until the So What Fuck You team, there was no one more So What Fuck You, maybe still in Blue Jays history, than Brett Lawrie. Yeah.
I mean, he was so ridiculous. Like,
for better and for worse.
He'd make a big play and then he'd just like scream his way through the dugout, like smashing people's hands with high fives, absolutely top of his lungs screaming. Like, he played at 150% speed at all times. He would crash into railings. He fell into that one pit at Yankee Stadium.
The pit catch or non-catch, I guess. I feel like if that happened, I think in 2014, when like he was kind of on his way out. If that happened in 2011, like, I remember the reaction being like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, if that happened in the season we're talking about, it would have been on posters.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the crystallizing moment for me in this run is the summer of 2011. It was August 10th. This is truly only 5 games into the Brett Lawrie experience. It was Blue Jays Athletics, and I worked a shift at Uncle Betty's, the restaurant that I worked at after I went back to school. So I had gone back to school. I had given up my Blue Jays path in life at the time. I was like, I'm going to be a television producer and produce the Jays games. That was sort of my first trajectory. And then I was like, I'm going to go to comedy school, completely alter my life, turn it upside down, and be a waiter again at 26. It was okay. Gutsy. Love to see it. But remember, I worked.
Who amongst us hasn't completely upended our career at 26?
Of course. It's the year you're supposed to do it. Worked a shift that night, and then I would occasionally, on my way home, I would stop in at a restaurant and order. I honestly got a Boston pizza at Eglinton. I would go in and I would order this salad and a beer just to sort of eat solo. I don't know if you've ever eaten by yourself at a restaurant, Jake, but it's excellent. It's excellent.
And I will say, as someone who has also served before, I completely understand the desire to just go sit by yourself for a couple hours after a serving shift.
And not bother my waiter. Just feel like, hey, I need beer and a salad. I'm going to pay for this immediately, and then I will just disappear. And
yeah. I will give you the cash I just earned from doing what you're doing.
Absolutely right.
And then go home.
So it is a 3-1 game for the Athletics, and Lawrie comes up bottom 6, I want to say.
Still hitting 9th, by the way.
Still hitting 9th. And they go to the bullpen. They bring in Craig Breslow. He gives up a single to Aaron Hill. Aaron Sevilla strikes out, if you can believe that. And then 1 out, bottom 6. Brett Lawrie comes to the plate, and I am, quite literally, I'll never forget this, I am getting up to leave the restaurant, and I stop, and I literally say, oh, I need to hang on a second. Laurie's about to hit a grand slam.
Long drive left field. Willingham back at the wall. Grand slam home run, Brett Lawrie.
I stop and I turn, and he absolutely no doubts it into the left field corner. And it was like, that's what it was. It was like, first of all, I can't leave the restaurant before seeing Lawrie hit because it's going to be exciting. And he's obviously about to hit a game winning home run and put them up down from down 3-1. And he absolutely, he did. And he would double in his next at bat in the 8th. He was just he's absolutely electric. It was everything you could possibly expect. And then I also remember later that summer, would have been September, because it would have been the first week of September, because I would have been coming back from school, because I would have been walking back from the subway. I was walking back from the subway, and I saw somebody I had used to work at Sportsnet with, somebody that was this guy that was a flash from my life I had just given up, that Brett Lawrie sort of helped represent. And he asked me about Brett Lawrie. He was like, can you believe it? Can you believe this guy out of nowhere? And I was like, he's born to be the biggest superstar in the city. I don't see any other possible way this can possibly turn out. We were just standing on the street, just gushing about this guy. So ridiculous. But he was the toast of the town. August, September 2011. He was the only guy anybody talking about sports.
I think that you phrased it perfectly. It felt like he was destined to be basically kind of what Kyle Lowry is today.
Right.
He was destined to own Toronto.
Yeah.
And for 18 months he did, which is crazy, but it's such a funny sort of footnote in Blue Jay history, in the sense that it wasn't successful in the end of it. It didn't really do anything for the team in a lot of ways, but it was just the biggest thing in the world. It's especially weird to me in retrospect after the 2015 and 2016 Blue Jays, after the last 5 years of the Maple Leafs, after the last 9 years or 7 years of the Raptors, how massive this was, because at the time, Toronto had nothing.
They had traded Halliday. There was zero expectation for
the
this
Jays
team.
were bad. TFC were bad. The Leafs were bad. The Raptors were bad. The Raptors Bosch was had I think already left at this point. The Leafs were dog shit, and TFC were terrible. The Jays were it was just, it's one of the only of my early 20s Toronto sports unifiers, even though the team was still pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. No, but it brought them to something they hadn't had even throughout Halliday. He was sort of the comics comic where you had to already really love baseball to get why it was fun to watch Halliday. Whereas Lawrie, it was just sit down and watch. He's going to explain it as soon as the ball gets hit to him or as soon as he gets up. It was self-evident what about him was special. And you sort of touched on it, that way he played, the reckless abandon, he was the human can of Red Bull, just clearly just 21-year-old absolute shit-eating wild man that was somehow also a Canadian that also was having this unbelievable stretch for the Blue Jays. I know it seems like we're just talking about it for 15 minutes straight, I can't believe it, but again, if it was man, you never see anything like it in this city, really, in terms of sudden arrival and then being absolutely everywhere.
I would argue that in a lot of ways we still haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's funny. The only guy that I would put near that, hilariously, is Josh Donaldson.
Right, but even that took a while.
Right,
because there was the Lawrie crew who was I don't know, and then obviously Donaldson was, which is crazy.
Well, a lot of people had bought red jerseys. Right.
That's a very good point. But with Donaldson, obviously he was amazing from the jump, but it took a while. Like, one of the big revisionist things about the 2015 team is that people were going before July.
Absolutely.
Like you, me, and Zach went to Chris Colabello's first game, and I think we sat in like 4 different seats that game because you could.
Yes, we had the ballpark pass, and so we would just go in and then sit wherever we want. I would go in and sit 200 level outfield behind the bullpen because you could sit in the shade. Yeah, and literally there was never an usher. I went to like 30 games and never saw an usher. But
people forget in 2015 that like it wasn't always like the David Price game in the crowd there. It was pretty empty still because they were a 500 team.
Yeah.
So like I feel like Donaldson I think became what Lawrie hype was. Like by the end of the season he was untouchable. But I remember I went to the game 1 of the Raptors Wizards series that the Raptors lost. And that same day, Josh Donaldson walked off the Braves. And we were literally walking past Skydome as he hit the home run. Because we were hoping to get to the bar to watch the end of the Jays game after the Raptors game. Because the Raptors game's at like noon. Because it's game 1 in a Raptors series. And I feel like Donaldson walked off the Braves and people were like excited and happy that he was so good. But it was like May and everyone was kind of bummed with the Raptors game. And people were like, oh, Josh Donaldson's... I remember being in the bar and people being like, Josh Donaldson's cool, but like, I don't know. Like the Blue Jays, like Brett Lawrie, that Blue Jays team sucked. Well, it didn't suck, but like they weren't that good. And then, but like people were just like, Brett Lawrie.
Yeah.
Anywhere you went, you were like, did you see Brett Lawrie today? It's great. Like even Vlad, like people were very excited for Vlad's first game. And we all went to Vlad's first game. But then the team was bad. And the rest of the season, they're like, oh, Vlad's here.
Yes. And Vlad was hype about what he was supposed to be. Whereas Lawrie was like, here's what this guy is, right?
Yeah.
He is this right now. Where part of the hype of Vlad is like, he's going to come up and be the best player. And it was like Lawrie before he arrived was like, they're going to call up Lawrie. And it's like, oh, cool. I don't know what that means. And he finally arrives and like, oh my God, this guy is like a piss-soaked firework. Like unbelievable.
Right. Cause like we traded Sean Markham for him, I want to say. And he was still a prospect. So it was just like, all right, they're calling up the Canadian guy.
Right.
Like who amongst us had been watching Brett Lawrie in the minors? You know what I mean?
It's a different time. You never paid any mind to what Brett Lawrie would have been doing in the PCL. And we also had to just learn to not trust the PCL was the second time. Anyway, we're going to dig in next week, talk about the peak of 2011 Lawrie Mania. It's September 5th, 2011 at the Rogers Center, a Monday afternoon game against the Boston Red Sox, a nail-biter, an extra inning game. And we'll deal with it and talk about it next week on Sportsfeld Storytime.